Okay, for this video, what I wanted to do is show you how I created the little the liquid that's in this, which in my mind, this is like a mechanical device, and this is like some fluid, like oil or like a transmission fluid or something kind of thing that has leaked out in this mechanical device, and so it's kind of there. So I'm just using it as a facility to show more interest as far as design elements into the scene, as well as showing additional skill sets of how to do liquids. So whenever you're trying to build something like this for a portfolio, at any given time, you're trying to show skill sets and you're trying to expand skill sets. So by putting the braided cable in there, I show an expanded skill sets of, you know, how to make a braided cable and how to get it in there. And so I'm going to do that with this liquid. And so I'm going to show you how I came about creating the geometry, the actual geometry for the liquid. Okay, so here's my max scene. And let's just go, we're going to move to top view, and I'll just come over here and show you how I created the liquid. So initially the liquid is just created from a spline. So I just create a spline, and I'm trying to create a kind of a flowy kind of liquid flow to this, and then I'm going to come back and do the same thing I was doing in my other ones, which is changing these Beziers to smooth, so it just kind of smooths this out, and then of course I can come in here and change what this looks like. Alright, so that gives me the base of liquid, and then from there what I do is I put an extrude modifier on this. And then I go ahead and just make this, for right now, I'll just put this cable on there, but later we'll make some liquid. So there is, given just some thickness, whatever you think is appropriate for your liquid. Now, I'm going to end up subdividing this, so I've got to turn this into all quads. So it's according to which version of Max you're in. Right now I'm in Max 2020, so I don't have the retopology modifier. If I was in Max 2021 or 2022, I would use the retopology modifier. But you can still get almost the exact same look by using your quadify mesh to turn this into geo. And we don't want it too tight. We want it fairly loose like that. Works pretty good, because then eventually what we're going to do is go ahead and put a subdivision on that and smooth it so that we get a nice kind of smooth liquid like that. So that looks good. Now, the beauty of building it this way versus building geometry, which a lot of people do it that way, is I can come back and expand on this now. So if I come back to my line, I can hit create line here, and I can say, okay, well, I want another, like a little smaller piece, you know, over here. And then of course the same thing with that. I want to make sure that's all smooth too. And then be sure I turn off my subdivision, and now when I go back up to the stack at the top, then it, you know, I'm going to have my liquid there, and it's auto saving on me. There we go. So okay, we're going to reapply that quadify mesh, and the reason we're having to reapply the quadify mesh is because that it rechanged the vertex count on here. Okay, so we probably just need to turn down. Our settings were too big, and there we go. And then back with our mesh smooth on there. So, and a lot of times, you know, when I'm doing this, you know, I'll have like a big piece, and then I'll have some small pieces, and then I'll do some little drips, you know, just to give it a certain kind of look and feel. So like here, a big mass, then like a smaller mass, and little drippy here, and then I wanted some design over here a little bit, but I didn't want to create a tangent, so I put me a small piece over here and a couple of drips over here. So it has, you know, it's a design element as well as, you know, showing your ability to create the look too. So you just kind of have to have a design sensibility about where you're doing this. So this is kind of the final look, which is our chrome loop, which everybody's doing, and then I'm going to come back and show you also how I did this ground, and then how we did the cable, and then how to did the liquid, and I'm going to show you how I created the texture for the liquid as well. Okay, now for the material that I put on that, the shader that I put on this. Initially, I just started with a physical glass material, so I just came in here and picked a preset, and I just picked a preset that was solid geometry glass, which is what I did. And then I came in here and started playing with the colors and the transparency. Okay, so I didn't want it to be just a solid color. I wanted it to have some variance into it. So I used two procedural textures. The first thing I did was I used a swirl. So this is a procedural texture. Now, a splat is a 3D procedural texture, but a swirl is a 2D procedural texture. And what that means is a 2D procedural texture needs a mapping coordinate. So what I did is just came on here from the top, and I just put on a UVW planar map, which you can see there, that covered the whole thing. So it's just a planar map. There's nothing special about it, but it allowed me to use the splat, and then it's going to create some swirls on there. Okay, so basically, let's see. Okay, let's see if I can turn this off. There's the final look, but okay, so there is just with the swirl on there. Okay, so I'm using two colors, and of course when you're doing transparency color maps, they need to be very subtle colors. So I wanted kind of a amber, kind of like a transmission fluid, and then I wanted a kind of a dirt to go into it to give it a kind of a dirty look to it, like dirty oil. And you can see these are very subtle colors, because if you go too heavy on these, then it just looks luminous, which I didn't want that. I wanted kind of a subtle look to it. So this kind of amber, that's giving me the amber, and this is giving me this kind of dirty look to it. Okay, and then I wanted it, so that it varied across the surface. It's not just a solid color. These are the small things that make things kind of pop off to people, instead of just putting a solid color, which I could have done that. And initially, that's what I did when I was blocking it all out. I just used solid color, but eventually I come in and add more and more detail. So, and I had to play with these settings until I got it to spin exactly the way I wanted it. And I never could get it exactly the way I wanted it, but I just got it close enough, because what I really wanted it to look like, it was kind of, the dirt was kind of blending in with it, and it didn't have a specific pattern, just kind of organic, kind of a fractal pattern in there. And then eventually, to me, that was too smooth too. I wanted to break it up where it had like some chunks in there, more like there were some actual pieces of kind of dirt that was kind of swirling in there. So I came back and put a splat in here, and I put it into the dark part. And I'll double click on my splat here so we can see the settings on it. There's not as much settings in it, but I used the same blue that I used in here. Okay, and then of course it's all about the size and the threshold, iterations, or how many that you're getting there. So you go back and forth and back to get it the way you wanted it to look, and eventually when I added that in, it looked like this. So now you can see there's like some splotches inside of there. Okay, that didn't exist before. And then that was a pretty nice kind of dirty kind of oil that I was kind of shooting for. So that's what I ended up with. And then eventually, it looks like that. So it was physical glass, and then I played with the color and the transparency. I used a swirl. It's got to have a mapping coordinate to get a kind of a swirly kind of a look in there, breaking it up. And then I wanted some chunks in there. I used splat. I could have also used maybe speckle, but splat is more like irregular kind of chunks to put into it. And of course the colors had to be very subtle, and it took a lot of trial and error till I got it the way I wanted it. But that's how I ended up getting the final material on there. So I've got a nice kind of a glossy, oily kind of a look for this piece to kind of enhance that. Okay, and that's how I got that. So I'm going to come back and give you some instructions on how I got this kind of a chunky floor, which was several procedural textures stacked. And of course, the thing I'm hoping you're picking up here is that we can stack procedural textures one inside of the other to get these nice kind of organic looks. Okay. All right. Hopefully that helps you. Thank you very much.